Welcome back, everyone. This is day 15 of our grow. Saturday, May 9th, 2020. You may remember these little guys here. These were seeded on day 1 2 weeks ago. And I think they're looking pretty good. Now it's time to put these in individual buckets with some full nutrient. So first I will show you how I mix my nutrient, what my formula is, and then I will show you what it looks like to use different types of water. So as I said before, everyone's water is different. So I'm going to mix up 2 different buckets, one with my tap water, one with my reverse osmosis water, so you can see the difference. And then I'll show you how I would suggest, if you want, to mix up your own nutrients for the first time. So after a fair bit of time, I've come to mix my nutrients in 2 different containers, one with my master blend and Epsom salt, or you can say magnesium sulfate, and the other one with my calcium nitrate. I do this to reduce the amount of precipitates in the solution. So if you were to take all the nutrient at once, dump it in a bucket and stir, you would find over time there would be little crystallized forms of nutrients sitting on the bottom of the bucket. And those nutrients are not available to the plant. So with this way, which I came upon from Dr. Kratky, the way he does it is that he mixes up 2 nutrient solutions. I found this works really well for me. And I don't weigh out my nutrients. I've actually gone to using measuring spoons, and I'll break down for you what this translates to in grams per bucket. These are 3-quart mixing containers, so 96 ounces. So the formula that I use is enough where it'll be 16 servings, if you will, of each. So I'll mix up the one with the master blend and Epsom salt, and the other one with calcium nitrate. And then when I go to do my full nutrient, I take this little measuring cup and I just measure out 6 ounces of each solution. And as I said, I have it broken down to what that would be grams per gallon. Keep in mind, I don't know if you knew this, but not all measuring spoons are created equal. If I were to take 1/2 teaspoon leveled of master blend in this measuring spoon, it would be about 2.4 grams. And if I use this metal 1/2 teaspoon leveled off, it'd be about 2.9 grams. So just keep that in mind if you decide to go to a formula where you're using measuring spoons. Don't assume that your measuring spoon has the same is the same size as what I have. So we'll get this container mixed up. First thing I do is I put in 400 microliters of pH down. So this is a pipette. It cost me about $30 just because I really wanted to dial in my pH a little bit better. I don't think I'm quite there yet, but I'm getting close. And please, folks, if you're using acid, full safeties. I have glasses on. So we'll take a 400 microliters. And we'll start adding our nutrient. Oh, a little tip for you. For the place where you're storing your nutrients, I would suggest that you get some silica packets to remove the moisture out of your containers. That way you won't have as many or too much clumping of the nutrient. So we got 2.5 there. We'll give it a quick shake. And we'll add 1.5 tablespoons of Epsom salt, or you can say magnesium sulfate. And then I'll go ahead and fill up this container the rest of the way with water. I am using my reverse osmosis water for this. So I got 96 ounces of water, actually a little bit more. And this breaks down to, if you were to go by gram per bucket, I keep saying gallon. The water I use in my bucket falls short of a gallon. It'll be probably closer to 10 or 12 ounces short of a gallon. So the breakdown by gram for the nutrients for this container for 1 bucket would be 2.4 grams of master blend, 1.27 grams of Epsom salt. The canned formula you usually see in master blend packaging will be 2.4 grams per gallon of master blend, 1.2 grams of Epsom salt, and then 2.4 grams of calcium nitrate. Get this calcium nitrate mixed up here. And as I said, with this, we do two tablespoons. Hopefully that's what I actually said earlier. So I'll get that filled up the rest of the way and mixed up. After I mix these, I like to let them sit for at least an hour just to make sure that everything is dissolved, and then I give it a good shake before I add it to my buckets. So we have this filled up with water. Per serving, it comes out to be roughly 1.93 grams per bucket. So the master blend formulas you'll usually see suggest 2.4 grams per gallon. So that's what I use. Roughly 2.4 grams of master blend, 1.27 grams of Epsom salt per bucket, and then 1.93 grams of calcium nitrate. This formula changes often as I make micro adjustments, and so it'll probably change again. So we've let the nutrients sit for a little bit, make sure everything's dissolved, have it all shaken up. We have our starters. Since the last time we saw them, we have a couple more that is sprouted up above the surface. The previous video I said that I only recommend having 1 lettuce plant per rock wool, and if you have 2 and you let them grow, one will dominate over the other, so you'll have basically one slightly larger and one kind of squished and smaller. You can do that if you want. I'm actually going to allow that to happen for that one right there, and this one I'm going to go ahead and thin it out here really quick. There we go. Now we'll start mixing it up. So I start with a bucket filled about 2/3 of the way with my reverse osmosis water. And I put in 6 ounces, roughly. From each mix. So this is the master blend and Epsom salt. And this is our calcium nitrate. Another thing I like doing, why I like doing my nutrient this way, is if I'm off 5-10% with the liquid that I put in there as a nutrient, doesn't impact it that much. So it gives me a little bit of a wiggle room. And now I top off the bucket with some more RO water. Trying to see if I can see the line. As I said before, the fill line is just below the this little rim right here on the inside. If you look really close, you can see kind of like a little indentation, a line going around the inside where you can fill it. Quick stir. And check our pH and TDS. So I use a TDS meter. This is a pH meter. I use a TDS meter. A TDS meter is essentially an EC meter, electroconductivity meter, with a math formula calculated into it. So mine goes 500 times EC. So if you had an EC of 2, it would display as a TDS of 1000. But with our pH, we're sitting at about a 5.6. I like that a lot. And you can go online and look to see what people use for their TDS and their pH. You'll see ranges from, for the pH somewhere between 5.5 to 6 probably. For TDS, probably from, off the top of my head, probably around 600 up to 850. That's sitting at about an 832. Yeah, about an 830. So that's where I like to be. I wouldn't mind if it was a little bit lower. It's something that you'll need to experiment with to see the growth and maybe just play around with the formula a little bit, but that's where I land with a pH of 5.6 and a TDS of 830. If you go to YouTube, which you're already on, and look up eGrow, E-G-R-O, there is a great page there that gives lots of good information about how to grow hydroponically in other ways. So if you go to their page and search on hydroponics, you'll see some great videos. One of them is a video, check my notes here. It's growing lettuce and culinary herbs hydroponically. A lot of the content might be over your head, but I think it might be worth your time to watch just to have a good base level of knowledge from that. And they also have a website, I believe it's egrow.org. I'll put the links in the show notes, but they have research papers, and they did research papers on symptoms of common nutrient deficiencies in hydroponic lettuce with lots of nice pictures, and they show their studies where they remove one particular type of nutrient and then what the effects are of that. So great resources. I encourage you to look into those as you go on your hydroponics journey. Okay, now it's time to load up our lettuce. So if you want to do a sanity check, you can take one of your nut cups, drop it in there, and if the water is going up, I like to see about a third to halfway up the slotted part of the nut cup. You're good. So we'll grab this guy right here. And sometimes it can be a challenge to, if the root structure is really big and it gets a little staticky sometimes. I don't know if I should say staticky, but it'll cling to the edges there. It just takes a little practice, but there it is. We have lettuce growing in full nutrient. And before I go off camera and load up the rest of our lettuce in individual buckets, I wanted to show you one more advantage of using this system of pre-mixing the nutrients. So when I get down to the bottom of these containers and there's a little bit left over, I'll take the remainder and put it in another mixing container. And then I'll use this for other parts of my grow room. So if I need to top off nutrients, I'll have this available. Also, if you wanted to use this for your initial nutrient, you could just take, I guess, about 4 ounces of this nutrient and use that for your initial nutrient, just something handy to have around. So I like this system a lot, mainly because it reduces my amount of precipitates, but it also allows me to mix up nutrient in bulk in advance. We have all of our lettuce in individual buckets, so that's exciting. Now I want to run you through a little bit how I would suggest that you could do your own nutrient mixture and to show you the difference between water types. So on this side here, this is my tap water. My tap water does go through a 3-stage filtration system. We are off of a well. And then on this side, we have our reverse osmosis filter. So it goes through the house filter and then it goes through another stage where it reduces the amount of total dissolved solids in the water. Quick side note about water. If you are using municipal or city water, something that is treated and pumped into your house, I'd encourage you to do your own research on that, on the effects of that type of water and hydroponics. I know there's an impact. I've never used any sort of municipal water source for doing hydroponics, and I don't have enough background knowledge and certainly no experience in that. So please do your own research. So when you're mixing nutrient for the first time, I would suggest using a formula about 10% less than the packaging suggests. So instead of a 2.5 or 2.4 gram of the master blend, I would use maybe a 2.2 for starters, and then a 2.2 instead of 2.4 for calcium nitrate, and then 1.1 instead of a 1.2 for your Epsom salt. And then you can do your measurements, check your pH, and then adjust accordingly, and keep notes on it. It will be helpful. I should be better about keeping notes, but I'm really not. What we have lined up here is the nutrient formula that I use. I've rounded it off to the nearest tenth, and I'm going to show you what I think is a good way to mix up nutrients. There's certainly lots of opinions out there. I am just some dude showing you how I grow lettuce in my basement, so take that into consideration. So I would suggest putting in the master blend first, giving it a good stir. And when I fill my buckets, I do it about 2/3 to make sure I don't splash around too much like I just did. And then I would add in the Epsom salt. So I think the issue with the precipitates and the water comes from the mixing of the calcium nitrate with the other nutrients. So at this stage, you want to definitely have your master blend and Epsom salt mixed up and dissolved really well before putting in calcium nitrate. It would not be a bad idea to mix up your calcium nitrate in a different container and adding it in after it's been fully dissolved. But that's kind of a pain, so we're not going to do that. And then once we get these mixed up, we will top off the buckets with the water to our desired level, and I will do a pH and Tds check. Before I put anything in, the pH of my tap water is 7.88 with a TDS of a whopping 192 zoinks, and my RO water came in at a pH of 7.05 with a TDS of 9. So those reverse osmosis filters really do a good job at removing the excessive total dissolved solids, but it also makes other challenges along the way. We have everything mixed up, and the results are the tap water, which started with a pH of 7.88, dropped only to a 7.31, and the TDS, which started with the tap water, was a 192, and after adding the nutrient, it was 934. For the RO bucket, starting with a pH of 7.05, the pH went down to a 5.75, and the TDS started at a 9 and it finished at an 808. I think one of the reasons why this didn't match our liquid formula that we mixed in is, one, there's going to be a variance of a few percent. It won't be precision each time, but I think maybe the nutrients weren't completely dissolved, or are not completely dissolved. So now you can see when I say everyone's water is different, this is the water when I first started doing hydroponics. This is what I was working with, and I had a lot of frustrating challenges with high nutrient content and a lot of it not being beneficial to me. It still worked. I could still grow lettuce and it was fine. It may not be saleable quality lettuce, but I could grow it. But I did need to adjust the nutrient that I used in my mix down quite a bit. And obviously I had to use a lot more pH down. So I'm glad that I have an RO filter now, but it is certainly not necessary. But this is something you will need to discover with your own water. So from last week, this is our lettuce mix. I went ahead and put in full nutrient for that. Here is our basil, and I'm probably going to wait a little while before I go through and try to start thinning those out, but put this in full nutrient as well. Actually, I went with just a little bit over, so basil generally needs a little more nutrient, a little bit more of a calcium feeder, if I remember off the top of my head. So instead of a 6 ounce from each one of my mixed containers, I did about 6 1/4, 6 1/2, somewhere in there. These are our 5 starters from last week. They're all thinned out, and I put in 4 ounces of my leftover nutrient jug in there for the initial nutrient mix. And then we have 5 new lettuce starters for today. And we'll get this all loaded up into the rack. I wanted to show you how I'm going to lay out everything on the bottom shelf since our space is filling up a little bit. So I use the spacing of these wires to center everything. So from the left, I do 8 spaces, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 spaces in, and I put the edge of that bucket there, centering it on the rack in the middle. And then between the buckets, I do 6. And then all the way over on the right, these 2 buckets here will also be 8 spaces away from the edge. So everything will be nice and centered. A little OCD, but that's the way I lay it out. And then all the rest of the buckets can just slide right into place. This is what the light position will be, obviously 10 inches higher. The light is dispersed essentially in a big oval pattern. Happy Leaf was kind enough to send me some power value readings, photosynthetically active radiation readings for 6, 12, and 18 inches. So I'll post those in the show notes, so if you want to see the light dispersion over different light heights, that could be a valuable resource for you. And we're loaded back up. As as you may notice, I like to put the starters towards the center to make sure they get plenty of light so they don't turn leggy and grow too tall and get top heavy in the first few weeks. I hope this information was beneficial to you today. I'm still really excited. I think things are looking good. So we'll catch you next time.